Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and today let's have some pre-cut fun. We need to start with a pre-cut, and in this case it is going to be one charm pack. We're going to need about 1.5 yards of background fabric, and that's going to give us a 45-inch square quilt. For this particular charm pack, I could have chosen a light or a dark background, and this time I've decided I'm going to try the dark background. I think it's going to look very elegant. The pattern we're going to do is called Road to Oklahoma. It's a very simple block, but it's really nice when you put it together. There's 42 pieces in this bundle, and they are 5-inch squares. So cutting is going to be very easy. We do want to cut widths of fabric, and the first one we're going to cut is 5 inches. From that 5-inch strip, we are going to need 8 5-inch squares. You will need to cut 8 additional strips, and they're going to be at 4.5 inches. From those strips, you're going to be able to get 12 16.5 by that 4.5 and 24 4.5-inch squares. I would recommend that you cut your 16 inches first, and you're going to be able to get 2 out of that width of fabric. Then you're going to be able to get at least 1 square, and that's going to save you some extra fabric. So the total pieces we're going to need, we will need 12 16.5 inches by 4.5 inches, 24 4.5-inch squares, 8 5-inch squares, and that 1 charm pack, which is 42 pieces. These 8 5-inch squares are going to make half square triangles, so we will need to pull 8 pieces from our bundle. So we're going to need to take that background fabric and place it together with one of the charm packs. We do need to draw a line from corner to corner and stitch on each side of that line. But instead of using a 1/4 inch, you need to use a very scant 1/4 inch. So if you have a machine that you can move your needle over, move it over 2 or 3 little clicks, because we do want to be able to trim these down to 4.5 inches. Once we've stitched on each side of the line, cut this apart down that center, and then we're going to be able to square these up to 4.5 inches. Do a test square, and if you find your square is not going to be big enough, instead of using a 1/4 inch, use an 1/8 inch. And that way you'll be able to get that to that 4.5 inch. Once these have all been trimmed down, we need to trim all of those squares to 4.5 inches. So everything is going to have a 4.5 inch common measurement. We're going to make 4 patches, so take 16 of the background fabric and 16 of your squares and sew them together. I did press the seams to the darker side. Now divide that pile in half, and we're going to be able to stitch those together to make a 4 patch. Put those 8 aside, and let's work with these half square triangles. Divide up the half square triangles and have that background fabric so that the points are pointing in. You will need 8 of those charm packs to sew on one side and 8 background fabrics to sew on the other. You'll be able to see you have this sort of tulip shape. So the units are going to get sewn together just like we did the 4 patch. So the seams here, here, and then sew that together. We now have 8 blocks that look like tulips and 8 4 patches. We're going to put those together, but we do have options. We divide that pile in half and have it so the background squares are running right down that center. Divide that tulip block and have the tulips so that the background fabric is facing out. And this is one way the block can be laid out. So we can have it so we have the pathway leading. Bring those tulips in. That gives us another look. We can have the background fabrics going in the other direction, and that gives it another look. And we can still turn this one more time. So this block does have a lot of options. I will be having my path going right down the center and my background fabric facing out. So depending on your fabric, you can rearrange this to something that you like. We now can sew these together in units of 2 and then sew that line together, and we will have 4 of these blocks. And when we're done, it's going to be 16.5 inches. And from here, we're going to add some sashing and a border. Now that those 4 blocks are done, we have another choice to make. We can have those tulips pointing into the center, or have the 4 patches in the center, or have one of each. If you're building more than 4 blocks, you will definitely have more choices. I'm going to have those tulip blocks pointing into the center. And now I get to add some sashing. And those were the pieces that were cut at 16.5 inches, and that's what our blocks equal. So I'll need to put these pieces down the center and have a block in the center, and then put them all the way around the outsides, and at each intersection we're going to have a block. So we will be needing a total of 9 of these pieces. I'll be doing one portion at a time. So I'm going to sew this unit together with that sashing in the center, and same with that side. Then I will make one long piece. So I'm going to have the 2 sashing pieces, and one of those blocks will be stitched in the center. So I'll have this long piece that will join those 2 pieces together. Once the center's done, I find it easier if I do the top and bottom first, and I'm going to just do that by making that same unit in the center. Take 2 long pieces and sew that in the center, then add those units onto the top and the bottom. When the top and bottom's done, we need to do the 2 sides. I'm going to sew that piece in the center, but then put 2 ends on, and they're going to fit on each side of the quilt. With those 2 sides put on, the quilt is now done, and it equals 45 inches. We only had 4 squares, and we were able to use up a charm pack at just a little bit over a yard of that background fabric. Now I used a dark background, but you can use any color at all. And the only thing I had left from that charm pack was 1 square. So we definitely got to use that entire pack. This was a fun block. We were able to change it many different ways if we wanted to as we were going along. The one thing we needed to keep in mind was those half square triangles we need to sew with a very scant seam allowance so that they can be trimmed to 4.5 inches. Other than that, this entire quilt goes right back to our 1/4 inch seam allowance. And it doesn't take a long time to do. If you have more than 1 charm pack, you of course can make more blocks and add to it. But this definitely is a fun pattern to use those charm packs up with. I do hope you give this pattern a try. It really is a lot of fun. And thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. You can join me on Facebook, Instagram, and I have a newsletter, all under Sew Very Easy. Bye for now. Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and today let's have some pre-cut fun. We do need to start with a